Morning. We begin the new parak on 141b, Kuf Mem Aleph Amid Beis. The Mishnah is going to talk about muksa. We're going to have the concept of when you have a muksa item on top of or inside a basket where there's something else that's usable. We've seen before a couple of concepts that will come up again. We're going to have to touch on as we go through this. An item that has no typical use is a muksa machmas atzmos, such as a rock, a stone. Generally, they are not used for anything. So unless they are designated for a purposeful use, such as a doorstop or something like that, they would be muksa. A muktzah item that's on top of something else intentionally was left there before Shabbos, so then the item that it's on becomes a an accessory to the muktzah, and it nullified to the muktzah itself. And just as the muktzah item sitting on it it may not be moved, so too that which is supporting it, that which is holding it up, supporting it, or it's placed upon, is also going to be muktzah. If it was left there by mistake, then that is not a muktzah because it's not nullified to the muktzah item. It is not there to support it. It just happens to be there. If we have on that item that is muktzah, so on the supporting item, such as you have it in a basket, a tray, or something like that, you have a muktzah and a non-muktzah item at once. So then the non-muktzah item, being that it is of importance, it will make the muktzah item in there not be the primary, and so the supporting tray is not supporting the muktzah, it's supporting the non-muktzah, and therefore is allowed to be moved. We'll see how this plays out, and we'll see various cases like this. One may carry his child, and the child is holding a rock, a stone, and even though that essentially I am moving the stone by moving the child, but the child is playing with it, and the child will cry if I take it out of their hands, and therefore I don't have to remove the stone from the child's hand. I can pick up the child even though they are holding on to this muktzah item. Similarly, you have a basket, and in the basket there's a stone. You can move the basket. Tamei teruma is going to be muktzah. It's muktzah on account of that there's no usage. You're not allowed to eat the teruma if it's tamei, if it's spiritually impure, and the reason is because only a kohen can eat teruma, and he's only allowed to eat it when it's tahor, and the only usage he has is he's allowed to burn. It needs to be burnt. He's allowed to benefit from it when it's being burnt, but obviously he cannot benefit from it. You can't benefit from it on Shabbos because you're not allowed to burn it on Shabbos, and therefore, being that it's an item that has no use, it's muktzah at the onset of Shabbos. This is a useless item, and therefore it's put aside. And even if it has, and so therefore you can't move it. However, if it has in the same basket, so you have a large basket, and in it, Tues explains you have smaller containers, some of teruma tahora and some of teruma tameya, some of pure or impure teruma, or non-teruma at all. You have just a food that you're allowed to, that the general public can eat. That's allowed to be moved. However, you can also nullify a mixture in 1 in 100. And we'll see, the Gemara is going to explain that scenario. We'll get to that. So Amar Rava. So Rava said, here we're going to get into carrying in a public domain So our mission is not necessarily talking about a public domain. Our mission is just talking about carrying as far as muktzah goes, picking up even in your house. But the concept is that I'm carrying the child, so even though the child has a muktzah item, so what? I'm carrying the child, and we're going to get to a carrying in a public domain where the halacha is you're not allowed to carry in a public domain. And however, we've talked about multiple times that in carrying, we look at the primary purpose of what you're carrying, and whatever is secondary to that is going to be nullified to it. Such as if my primary carrying is a person, but I'm carrying them on a stretcher, on a bed. So the stretcher and bed are going to be nullified to the person, and we're going to evaluate only whether or not carrying of the person is halachically carrying or not. So for instance, we had a very unique case. Somebody's carrying a plate with it food, on it is food, and the food is less than the requisite amount, a grogeres. He's carrying a half a grogeres of food on a plate. Now the plate itself is a matter of value, but he's only carrying the plate in order to carry the food. And the food is not significant enough to constitute transgression of carrying. He will not have transgressed carrying because the primary is the food. The plate is secondary or nullified to the food because that's the intent of the carrying, and therefore it will not be carrying. So Rava says somebody's carrying a child, and the child has a pouch around their neck. Chayiv mishum kis, he's going to be obligated on for carrying the pouch because a pouch is not nullified to the child. It's an independent thing. The child itself is going to be exempt, as we're going to explain, because we saw the concept of chai noses atzma. According to Rabbi Nosson, if a human carries themselves, a live being carries themselves. But the pouch is going to be he's going to be chayiv. Tinuk mace v'kisu talabet savara, if it's a deceased child and a pouch around his neck, so potter is going to be exempt. Tinuk chay v'kis talabet savara chay mashum kis. So the Gemara says the first case where it's a live child and a pouch, why is he not going to be obligated for carrying the child? As the Gemara explains, Rabbi Nosson severely follows it. Rabbi Nosson, a live being carries itself. Well, then why don't we just say that the pouch is secondary and nullified to the child? Mila Tanan, did we not learn somebody's carrying a live person on a bed, or on a stretcher, whatever it is, a potter. Af alamita is going to be exempt for the bed because the bed, as we mentioned, is secondary to the person. The person is exempt upon because a living person carries themselves. The bed is secondary and nullified to the person, so he's totally exempt on this carrying. Pater af alamita shamita tafeilule, because the bed is secondary to him and nullified to him. Mita legabe chaim avatlile, because the bed services the carrying of the person and is therefore nullified to the person. Since the pouch is not necessary for the carrying of the child, so it's not really a part of carrying the person, and it's an independent thing. It's not really necessary, and therefore it is not nullified there. Tinik meis v'kis talabet savore pater. And the deceased child with a pouch is going to be exempt on both. So Gemara says, wait, this is a deceased child, so the child doesn't carry itself. Rava follows Rabbi Shimon that any malacha, one of the 39 principal acts that are prohibited, or any of its secondary acts, if they're not done for the purpose of what is being done, and the end result, the creative, productive manner, does not count as malacha. Malacha she'ena tzricha legufa. A malacha that is not required for itself. And we've seen this many, many times. Now, the Rashi takes this to the next level, where he says not only in the simple case, so where I'm digging a hole. So plowing is a prohibition. Digging is generally for the benefit of the ground that I'm digging. I'm softening the soil. That is the creative work, and that would be the end result. But if I don't need the ground softened, in fact, the hole I'm making is going to be of no use to me. I need dirt because I have a spill or something and I need to cover it. So I'm digging for the dirt that I'm taking away from there, and I'm leaving a hole behind. That would be melacha she'eina tzaricha legufa, work, creative work. I've softened the ground, but I don't need it where it is, and therefore it would not be chayiv. It would be exempt on that. So too, Rashi says over here, but he takes it one step further. Even if I'm carrying this person out, is the deceased out, I would rather not be in this situation at all, and therefore it's not a result that I want, and therefore it's melacha she'eina tzaricha legufa, as we mentioned earlier in the Masechta Tues and all the Rishonim and the halacha is not like Rashi. That's taking it to a degree where I'm intending to do this. I want it in the situation. I just rather not have the situation. That cannot be considered melacha she'eina tzaricha legufa. I don't need it for itself. Rather say I don't need it for itself because there's no benefit. I'm only moving the deceased because I need the place. I need it for something else, but I'm not moving it because of the benefit of the action of moving the deceased. In any case, therefore, this person is exempt. True, he's carrying the deceased through the public domain or into the public domain, but there's no benefit, and that's not the end result that they're looking for, and therefore it's going to be exempt. And the pouch, again, the pouch is of no benefit, and the pouch is batil is to a child, deceased, because they would leave it with it. They're not going to take it off the deceased child, and therefore it is of no use. Tanan, so in our Mishnah we saw a person can pick up their child and carry the child even though there's a stone in their hand. Now in the Academy of Rabbi Yanai they taught, this is a child that if you took the stone away from them, they would become sickly because they're having anxiety because they miss their parent, and they need that stone to hold on to as a comfort. It's their service stone. My area Evan, I feel a dinner nami. So why are we talking about specifically a stone? We should be talking about even money, even a coin. And now we're on 142a, one kuf mem beis amar aleph. So the Gemara says, why did Rava say Loshana lo even avol dinar aser? Why is this only on account of that it's a stone, but a dinar, a coin, is going to be prohibited? The Gemara says, well, there's a reason. Even a stone falls, the parent won't pick it up, and therefore, or the person carrying the child won't pick it up, and therefore there's no concern of carrying themselves. But dinner, but if the coin falls, the parent or the adult holding this child may actually pick it up, and there's a concern. Now, obviously, if this was a serious health concern for the child, so then even a coin can be picked up. Big deal. We're talking about that this is not really a serious illness for the child. It's not a sakana, a danger, but rather we're talking about something that is an anxiety, comfort for the child. Someone's asking a question.
Yeah.
Let me just finish. Give me a minute. Let me just finish the point. So we have. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. I'll unmute you in a minute. Of course, if it was a serious illness, then it would be permissible to carry this child, even if they're going to carry the coin themselves. What we're talking about, that this anxiety that the child has is minor. It's enough that it allows to carry the child and indirectly carry the muktzah item, and since there's no concern that the adult would carry the muktzah item directly. But if there was a concern that the adult would carry the muktzah item directly, then it would be prohibited, and that's the case we're talking about. Go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry, I muted you. I was getting feedback. Michael?
Sorry. The way they expressed it here in the parish is that the child has anxiety, that, separation anxiety from the father. So the father is carrying the child. Whatever he's got in his hand is not important.
Who's explaining that?
Well, I mean, it says Gagoin El Aviv. Al Aviv.
Okay. Either way, or the child has the child is going to be concerned about the losing of that coin or of the item. Yeah, Tessa says that the child is going to cry if he drops the coin. He's going to be sad, very distraught by removing the coin or the item, the muktzah. Tanya Kavasei de Rava. So we have a brisa that concurs with Rava. And this is the concept that when you carry a person, you carry not only them, but you are directly carrying what they are carrying, and therefore it's considered you're carrying the muktzah directly, and you need a reason why it'd be permissible to carry that secondary muktzah, the item that person is carrying, because we see somebody's carrying their folded clothing, so they're not wearing their clothing, but they're carrying it. So if he's carrying these vessels on him, even if it's over his shoulder and so on, if it's in his hand, it's not being worn properly, that's considered carrying in a public domain. However, if he's wearing them, pater, he's going to be obviously exempt. You're allowed to wear clothing and jewelry. Pater. If you carry another person, with the person itself are carrying, you're going to be exempt on account of chaynas esatzmai. A living being carries himself, so you will be exempt, even though it's prohibited to do, but you're exempt for carrying the public domain. That's only if they're wearing their clothing. But if they're carrying the ring in their hand, or their shoes in their hand, etc., and you carry the person, you will be chayiv, you will bring a sin offering and transgress at a Torah level for carrying the shoes that they are carrying in their hands when you carry this person. So we see that it counts as you directly carrying whatever that person that you're carrying is holding. The second case of the Mishnah was a basket. And the basket it has a stone in it, and you can move it. So the Gemara is going to ask why. Why don't we say the stone is muktzah, and the stone being intentionally in the basket makes the basket its primary basis, what's supporting and holding it, and therefore if it's nullified to the stone, and if the stone's muktzah, the basket itself is muktzah as well, so why are you allowed to move it? Amar Rabba Bar Bachana Rabbi Yochanan said, we're talking about a basket full of fruit. And as Tues points out, this is distinct from the next case in the Mishnah, which is talking about where you have teruma, tamei and tahara, pure and impure teruma in basket, which is really they're in individual containers within the basket. And so there's a question of removing each container separately. Here, there's the fruit and stone all together in the basket. So the Gemara says, let's dump it all out, the fruit and the stone. And this way the stone will be dumped out. and then you can put the fruit back into the basket. So the Gemara says, "Could Rabbi Lai Amarav the pears amitonofen." The fruits would get dirty or damaged if you toss them out. If you had walnuts in their shells, so fine, that would be okay, but that's not the case, and therefore it would damage the fruit. And the Gemara understands that for sure, since you have fruit in the basket, the primary purpose of the basket is to service the fruit, not to service the stone, and the stone is really nullified to the basket and fruit. However, if you have a way to get rid of the stone, you should, and therefore, since you can't, because the fruit themselves would get damaged, and so you can have the muksa item in there. And we talked about this before. If you have a basis l'davar asel l'davar mutter, you have the basis, the basket in this case, that is servicing permissible items, the fruit, and non-permissible items, the stone. That would you're allowed to move it because you have a basis for something that's permissible as well. Similarly, if you have a key ring that has your house key and your work key, or your house key and your car key, since that is a primary and important use of the key ring, the house key, you're allowed to move it on Shabbos.
There's a difference between a basket of tomatoes and a basket of potatoes. If I dump a basket of potatoes, nothing's going to happen. So it would be mutter to do that?
Well, you don't live in Idaho. If you listen to the people in Idaho, it says treat your potatoes gently, otherwise they will go bad. Obviously, it'll depend on what it is. That's why I said if you had walnuts, it's going to be okay because nothing is going to happen. If you have other produce, it will become ruined, damaged, dirty. You'd have to look at each scenario. Correct. So too here we're talking about fruit that could become a produce that can become dirty, damaged. The Gemara says, inu ne'uri. Why don't you push it all to one side, shake the basket so all the produce goes to one side, the stone is on the other, and then you can just toss the stone. No, actually, you intentionally have the stone there because there's a hole in the basket, and you put that stone there, which is larger than the hole, to block the produce from falling out of that hole. You want it there as a wall to the basket, and if there was no produce in there, so then you would say, okay, so the basket is, even though the stone is there to service the basket is servicing the stone at this point, and it's a muktzah. However, if there are produce in there that you can't toss the stone because actually you want it there, and the fruit make it that the basket is not muktzah. Metaltalin teruma tameya im tahora. You can move the teruma tameya, which is teruma that became tame, came into contact with something that is causes tuma, impurity, and you're not allowed to benefit from it. A Kohen may not even eat it, and the only benefit he could have is from the mitzvah is to burn it, and while he burns it, he can benefit from it, and obviously that you can't do on Shabbos, so it's a useless item on Shabbos. Nevertheless, you can move this basket that has a produce in it on account of that it has other produce that is usable, such as teruma tahora, proper teruma that is not impure, or just regular produce that anybody can eat.
A Kohen who's tummy could eat it?
Sorry?
A Kohen who's tummy could eat it, no?
So you're saying that there is a use for it needs to be burned. I'm not remembering offhand, but I think it can only be burnt. He may be exempt if he ate it.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he can eat it directly, right?
I don't remember. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I'd have to. I don't remember. So the Gemara says, "Amar Rav Chisda This is talking about where the tahor produce, the proper produce, is below, and the tamei produce is separate and above. But if it's the other way around, the tahor produce is above and the tamei produce is below, shakalei tahora. So just pick up the tahor produce itself. And as I mentioned, Tues says that we're talking about that they're in individual containers within this big basket. So just pick up the container of the tahor produce and leave the rest behind. Well, even when the tahor is below, when we toss the upper part, which is the impure, the tamei produce. And then you could take the tahor produce that's beneath it. Again, we're talking about produce that'll become damaged, that'll become dirty. Our Mishnah says you can move and carry the teruma that is tamei together with either teruma that's tahor or teruma that or non-teruma items. But the Brisa says that regardless which one's on top, whether the tamei is above and the tahor is above and the tamei is below, or vice versa, to yufta Rav Chisda. So that's a contradiction in the Brisa to Rav Chisda. Amalach Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda will respond. Masnita l'tzarach gufay, Brisa l'tzarach makom. The Mishnah says that you can move. Our Mishnah talks about that you can move it. That's where you need it for its place. You need gufa. You need it for itself. That means I want the tahor produce. I want to eat the grapes. I'm using it itself. So I can take out the upper produce because I don't need the place. The place where the basket is fine. What I need is the product. So any way that I can get to the product, I should move it. I can move it alone. That's enough. I get to pick up the grapes and bring it to the table, and that's fine. However, the Bryce is talking about where I need its place, the place where the basket is. The basket's on a chair, and I have a guest, and I need the chair. Moving the upper part, meaning to take out the tahor produce that I can eat out of the basket, it's not going to do anything because I need the entire basket's place, and therefore I can move it that way, move it away. Why is he assuming the Mishnah is that case, and therefore says, oh, so then move the kosher produce itself, and that will be enough? The Mishnah indicates that. The Ketani is safer because it says later, in later Mishnah, it says that if there's money on a pillow, you shake off the pillow and let the money fall to the ground. And the name of Rabbi Yochanan explained, that's only if I need it itself. But if I need its place, I can move the pillow with the coins on it because I need the pillow out of that place. So if I need the pillow itself, so then I just toss the coins. But if I need the place where the pillow is, so tossing the coins is not going to help because I have to move the pillow anyhow. So then I may as well pick up the pillow with the coins on it, and it doesn't make a difference. And since later it's talking about where he needs the pillow itself, so you need the item itself. Therefore, the first case too seems to indicate that indicates that the first case too is talking about where he needs the produce itself, and therefore, if Chisda said, well, if it's on top, you don't have to move the basket with the muktzah in it. You can move the produce itself, and that'll be sufficient. So ultimately, what this Gemara is saying is this: you have a basket that has muktzah and non-muktzah items in there. If you only need the non-muktzah item itself, and you can just lift it and take it out, so go ahead and do that. Why move the entire basket if all you need is one item? You need that item, pick it up and take it out. If it's accessible, where it's on top. However, when I need the area, the space that basket's on, So then it's not sufficient to just take out the item I need, because actually I don't need any of it right now. What I need is to move it away from where it is. So I can access the space that it's in, and then I'm allowed to move the whole thing, again, on the basis of basis l'davar aser l'davar muter. If something is a support for both a permissible and a prohibited item, then it's going to be permissible to move, because the prohibited item is nullified or secondary to the permissible item, the item I need, and it's going to be permissible to move it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer af ma'alin. Rabbi Yehuda says you can also make a mixture of truma and chulin, a meduma, permissible. So we know there is a concept of non-kosher food becoming nullified in kosher food by 1 in 60. That 1 in 60 ratio applies to many things, but there are different ratios. There's a ratio of 1 in 6 for stam yenam, wine from a non-Jew. There's 1 in 100, 1 in 200 for different items of different halachas. So for this, for teruma, we say that it's that the mixture is 1 in 100. If you have 99 pounds of produce, and then 1 pound of teruma falls into that produce, it now becomes meduma, a mixture of teruma, which a non-Kohen is not allowed to consume, and 99 pounds of kosher produce that anybody can consume. Now it is prohibited for a non-Kohen to eat any of that 100 pounds, because you don't have a ratio of 1 to 100, you have a ratio of 1 to 99. If the ratio is 1 to 100, then it's going to be nullified, and you're allowed to eat it. However, you do have to take out 1 pound of that 101 pounds as a symbolic, if you would, a symbolic removal of the teruma that's mixed in there. So I have 100 pounds of grapes, and 1 pound of grapes that I cannot recognize falls into it, and that 1 pound is a teruma. I'm allowed to eat it, even though I'm not a Kohen. I can eat any of it. However, I need to remove 1 pound of that in order to fix the mixture by removing a symbolic, if you would, teruma. So Gemara says you can make that fix on Shabbos. I can remove that 1 pound, even though I'm essentially fixing the mixture and allowing it to be consumed. You're fixing a prohibited mixture. So you're fixing the prohibited mixture. So the Gemara says, "Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Lezer Svirle the Amar Teruma Beina Machta." This is according to Rabbi Lezer, that says that the teruma, since it requires, since there is, it's like you're taking teruma, it needs to be placed in. It's as if it's independent. In other words, when I have a mixture of 101 and the teruma is in there, that teruma is essentially in its own pan. It's already separated, so that is it's considered as if it's an individual item. It's wrapped alone. The Tanan, as we learned, saw teruma shenafel lepachas memeya. We have one measure of teruma that falls into less than 100. So as we said, 99. V'nidma'u, and now they became a mixture and prohibited, because you have a non-nullified prohibited item in there, or a non-coin. And now from that mixture, so I have 100 pounds, 99 non-teruma and 1 teruma, meaning I have a prohibited item. All of it's prohibited to me as a non-Kohen, but on account of one measure of teruma. And now one measure falls from this basket into another basket of, let's say, 99 or less. So it's not nullified there. How much do I need to nullify? I might say that since the teruma in this basket is a 1%, a 1 in 100, right? It's not nullified in 1 in 99, so it itself counts. So it's a 1 in 100, and it fell into another basket, so should be nullified in 99 because actually the teruma is only 1% of the measure that fell in there. However, Eliezer says no. The teruma is considered wrapped in its own self-contained measure. Rabbi Eliezer says it will prohibit the next basket on account keterumas vaday, as if it itself was for sure teruma, because each one measure in this basket, I say maybe this is it, and it itself is a full measure of what it is.
How's that not brera?
Well, it's not brera. I'm not retroactively saying this is it. I'm saying this may be it, and it itself in its entirety is it. Now, technically speaking, it may be right. I'll say it this way. We have a bunch of grapes. The whole bunch. There are many bunches of grapes here. 99 bunches of grapes. This may actually be the one teruma grape, and it's not necessarily just 1% of it a teruma grape. That's actually less likely. But nevertheless, the first opinion says, well, I don't know if it is at all. So we just go by percentage of the whole basket, of the whole mixture. And Rabbi Eliezer says, no, we look at each measure separately, and this may be the entirety of the measure of the prohibited item. It's not brera is always a retroactive definition of something. Here it's not a retroactive definition. The definition was independent, and here I may have isolated the prohibition, or prohibited item.
But I mean, you could say that for the whole rest of the basket too.
Each measure that I remove from the basket, this may be it.
Right.
That's not a retroactive. That's an actual definition. However, the Chachamim say no. Since we already have a doubt in this basket, in this mixture itself, where the prohibited item is, and then one falls into another, so that's one doubt and then another doubt. So it's only going to nullify. You only have to nullify the 1% of what fell in. So I have a full pound of truma falls into the first mixture, and so that's 1% of that mixture, and then a full pound falls into the next mixture. I only have to nullify 1% of that pound. So the Gemara says maybe that's the same over here. Rabbi Eliezer says the reason why you're allowed to remove that pound in regards to Shabbos, that measure, and allow you to eat the rest is because it's already really separate anyhow. Each individual pound counts as its own measure and its own separate entity. The Gemara says no. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer is only saying it to be strict in mixtures. Say, look, we don't know what fell in, so you have to be strict, but you can't say to be lenient and that you're allowed to fix the produce by removing this measure on account of, well, maybe this is all the entirety of the teruma. Well, maybe not. And yes, you could be strict in the other time, but here you're going to be lenient and say, I'm allowed to remove it and fix the rest of the produce because it's considered separated already. Rabbi Eliezer never said that. Ella Hudamaka Rabbi Shimon. So rather, our Mishnah follows another halacha of Rabbi Shimon. The Tanan, we learned, Sa'a Truma Shanafla Me'evali Speaker like Biat Shanafla Acheres. The case we had was that produce that's prohibited to teruma fell into teruma. My first case was it fell one measure into 99 and it made it prohibited. What about if it fell into 100 and it's nullified there? And then another measure fell in. So I had 100 pounds of produce, 1 pound of teruma, which I'm not allowed to consume as a non-Kohen, fell into my produce, but it fell into 1 in 100, so it's nullified. And then later, another pound of teruma produce fell in. So if I count the two pounds that fell in, my ratio is now 1 to 50. However, if I say that the first one was already nullified and is not there, so I'm now in 1 in 101. So that's great. So if I didn't get to take out the teruma until another one fell in, harezu asura, that's prohibited. In other words, what we say is that the entity is still there. But Rabbi Shimon says no, the entity is completely nullified, and therefore so too, and therefore when the second one falls in, it's not going to be it's not going to it's not going to be a ratio of 1 to 50 because it's a ratio 1 to 101 because it's already completely nullified into it. And so the Gemara thinks this is on the same basis as Rabbi Eliezer earlier because the teruma is separate, and therefore the it's not on account of, as I just explained, that it's nullified in there, but rather because it's independent. It remains separated. And since it remains separated, I have the 100 kosher produce, the one teruma somewhere off to the side, I just don't know where it is, but it's independent. And the Gemara again assumes that it means independent, that it's sort of like its own entity. And when my next teruma falls in, it too doesn't become nullified. It's its own entity, but it doesn't prohibit the other 100 because it's still a ratio 1 to 100. So Gemara says, no, that's not the basis at all. Rather, the basis is, like we said, that the first one is completely absorbed into the mixture, and it's now a mixture of 101. Even though they fell subsequent to one another, it's as if it fell together. This is a concept that we call chozer v'neor. It's there, it's dormant. As soon as the higher percentage falls in, it now reignites it or reawakens it. And so 1 in 100 is dormant, but there, and therefore I'm allowed to eat it. When another one measure falls in, now it reawakens the other one, and it becomes a ratio 1 to 50. Therefore, each one is like a ratio 1 to 50. Rabbi Shimon, however, Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion that the first one becomes nullified. It's not dormant; it actually becomes completely null and void and absorbed into the 100. And the second one that falls in is really nullified, 1 in 101. Ella. So, what is the basis of our Mishnah that you can remove the teruma and it's considered as if it's and it's not considered that you're fixing the mixture and making it permissible to use, which is going to be prohibited as a fixing of produce. The Tanna Shimon Elazar says, in fact, when you have such a mixture, you're allowed to fix it by just designating in your mind a certain corner of the produce. I can look at one side of the produce and eat from another side. And therefore, it's already technically fixable without doing any action. And therefore, I'm allowed to take it out because it's already. I'm not creating a bigger fix than already is there. I'm just removing it all in advance. Does he follow this opinion? But there's a machlokes about that, whether you should or should not do this on Shabbos. The Tani we learned Rabbi Yehuda Omer Malin as Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar ben Mitzad. We see that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is actually disagreeing with Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, and he says no. Since you're able to do it in your mind, just look at one corner and say, okay, there's my teruma, and then I'm going to eat the rest. I should not remove it. And seemingly Rabbi Yehuda doesn't follow this. So Rabbi Yehuda different from Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. What he's saying is, you're right. You hold that you can just focus on one side and remove it, and that counts as a removal of the teruma. I say you're correct, and therefore, since it's already fixed, I'm even allowed to go ahead and physically remove the produce. Actually, remove it since I can fix it in my mind. It's already an accessible product, and so my removing a teruma is not really making it fixing it as a teruma, and I'm allowed to do that on Shabbos. So tomorrow, Bez Hashem, we'll go into the next Mishnah, a little behind, and we'll try and catch up. This was a lot of new concepts. Hopefully tomorrow will be easy.